I saw this yesterday. One of the researchers brought it to my attention, and I was like, I've got lots of questions. Let me play this public service announcement from the state of New York. Listen.
So there's been a nuclear attack. Don't ask me how or why. Just know that the big one has hit, okay? So what do? There are 3 important steps that I want you to remember. Step 1, get inside fast. You, your friends, your family, get inside. And no, staying in the car is not an option. You need to get into a building and move away from the windows. Step 2, stay inside. Shut all doors and windows. Have a basement? Head there. If you don't have one, get as far into the middle of the building as possible. If you were outside after the blast, get clean immediately. Remove and bag all outer clothing to keep radioactive dust or ash away from your body. Step 3, stay tuned. Follow media for more information. Don't forget to sign up for Notify NYC for official alerts and updates. And don't go outside until officials say it's safe. All right? You've got this.
So it's like COVID.
No, I don't think I do have this. I don't. I don't think I have this. That's from New York City Emergency Management. Now, why on God's green earth are they coming out with this? Well, the response was, well, we're not saying that it's going to happen. We just want people to be prepared for anything. My response to that is, when do you release the PSA for the bubonic plague? I mean, if you're just making us prepared for anything, how about what happens when somebody on a ship starts to launch Buicks onto the streets of New York with a catapult? I mean, we haven't thought of a nuclear strike in how long? What do they know that we don't know?
Well,
if anything.
First of all, they have been treating us like we're in the middle of the bubonic plague for the past 2.5 years, so I don't think they need any updates on that particular one. But, look, what we mentioned earlier, we are on the verge of war. Is that the right way to put it with Russia? Certainly, Russia considers us at the very least to be on the verge of war. Yeah, and that used to be something we were concerned about. I mean, when we were at war with the Soviet Union, that's when we had the duck and cover, vibe going on for everybody. So I'm not surprised. I honestly, it's probably something we should think about a little bit more.
I would agree with you, and not just because of Russia, but because there's several people that would work together to make that happen. So I was thinking about this yesterday with Vladimir Putin. I mean, he grew up in the Cold War where it was mutually assured destruction, MAD. And that was the theory that kept us all alive. Nobody would launch a missile because they knew that there would be a retaliatory strike and nobody would survive. Okay, because if they launched a missile, then we launch a missile, and if they see that missile coming back, then they would launch all their missiles, and then we would launch all of our missiles, and everybody would be dead. Okay, he lived through this. He's been the one talking about a nuclear option. Does he think that this administration, because I don't know, just wouldn't launch? If they launched a missile at New York and said, stay out of our backyard, would we just take it? Would this administration launch against Russia or not? I mean, it's a very dangerous game, but I'm not convinced that this administration would do that.
I think there's definitely an argument here to be made for that point. I think maybe if it hit New York, maybe we would be more likely to do it. But couldn't you see? Yeah, they fire a nuclear missile that lands in the middle of some uninhabited place in Kansas. or something where, okay, like maybe it does some damage, but it's not wiping out a city of, 11 million people. Would we do what would we do? Just back off?
I don't think we'd do anything.
Yeah, certainly the last few times we've been challenged, not to that level, but to some level, we've basically backed off. We've just folded. I mean, look what we did in Afghanistan, just basically folded up shop and left. So I don't know.
Do you see what we're now saying? Other countries are financing the rebels to go against the Taliban, and we came out with this moral indignation and said, we're not doing that, and we don't think any country should do that. That's just wrong. Leave the Taliban alone. What?
Yeah, it's bizarre. And I think a lot of people look at the Russia stuff with Ukraine, and there's a lot to be critical of there. We've been critical of a lot of it. And I think a lot of people look at it and say, okay, in our audience, they're always hyping the Russia stuff. They're always saying how bad Russia is. And, they're lying all the time in the media about it. And a lot of times they are lying in the media about it. But there's real reason to be concerned about this in two different ways. Let's say you're a Biden fan, right? You are a liberal. You love Joe Biden. I think 0.03% of the population is still in this category. So we want to make sure we address them. And the only thing standing in between us and World War III is Vladimir Putin's restraint, right? That's it. At any point, Vladimir Putin could say, you know what? I think you sending that missile over to Ukraine is enough for me to cross the line. And he could decide to start World War III just on his own basis. For the other...
And he has said that.
Yeah.
He has said that. Any missile that came from the United States, if it lands in Russian territory, we will pay a heavy price. Mm-hmm. And if I remember right, it gave me at least the feeling we were talking about a strike on us.
Certainly, it seems like a major escalation, and any major escalation would theoretically cause a response that could easily go out of control. And we're in the middle of World War III, maybe nuclear missiles flying over polar ice caps, right? That is, it's not a crazy idea. If you happen to be someone who is skeptical of Joe Biden and his presidency and his ability, his cognitive abilities, any of those things, you not only have the idea that Vladimir Putin, look, I mean, even if you don't think he's the devil that the media constantly portrays him as, which I think he's done much to deserve, but still, if you don't even believe that, he's still not exactly a stable character. You have that, but then you also have this guy who's falling off his bicycle every 10 minutes to walk the line between World War III and peace. This guy is the guy navigating the border between this breaking out to a much larger conflict that could very well result in, God only knows, nuclear missiles flying over ice caps. It's certainly in the stream of possibilities here if people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris screw up a little bit. Do you think the lady who's out here, we have veepthoughts.com where she's tripping over her words every 10 seconds. Joe Biden is overseas making speeches about how we have to remove Vladimir Putin because he can no longer be in power, changing seemingly U.S. policy on the fly by mistake. If you are at all worried about the competence of the Biden administration, this has to be something you're concerned about because they could screw this up at any moment. And even if this was never the intent of Russia to get into a larger scale conflict with us, the people we have in control navigating these lines are not capable of doing it. So we are in trouble just because our leadership is who our leadership is.
I'm going to make a prediction that before this guy is out of office, and I think we've already faced it, I'll bet you we've already faced something close, we will have a Cuban Missile Crisis style crisis. It will hit to that level. Whether we find out about it or not, I'm not sure. But I'll bet you we're going to hit because we're too weak. Do you know why? The Prime Minister Abe, why his death is so important? He was extremely powerful, and he was Japan first. And I don't have a problem with that. I think every country should be their country first. Take care of business, and that will, you'll be able to take care of yourself. Well, and then help others. His death made a landslide for his party. And the prime minister, the current prime minister, is in the same party as Abe. It's a liberal democratic party, but, they're more conservative by Japan standards, but don't be fooled. So the recent election has gone as a huge support for now the party that is of the current prime minister and what he's working on. Now, Kishida, I think is his name. He's a huge supporter of the Great Reset. He wants Japan to be the model country for the Great Reset. Here's one of the problems, however. Abe, his party, wants to build their own military. They want to have their own military power. I personally think that's good, and I think that's why Abe and Donald Trump got along so well, because America first, Japan first. You should run your own protection. Why? Other than, in the 1940s, we were a little smoked and they were a little smoked at us. We're like, yeah, know what? No army will protect you. Japan has a role to play in security. And that's why this is a problem. Because it looks like his death is being used as a rallying cry for the things that he believed in, which is change the Japanese constitution so it can expand its military. Now, that seems good for us, right? Or does it? Because Japan wants to expand its military because it doesn't trust China. Now, China will look at Japan as a massive threat. Not just America, but Japan. Does that make them more likely to stay contained as they build their military, or less likely? We have the stars aligning for a global war where you have Russia and China and Iran and all the bad guys on one side, and then you have the Great Reset aligned powers in Asia and here in the West. And I don't think anyone's trying to avoid it. I mean, I think there's lots of people trying to avoid it, but I don't think the world leaders necessarily see this as a bad thing, because it will hasten, I almost said hasten the return of the promised one, and it might do that, but it will hasten the changes that they feel have to be made. And people will go along with it because they'll just want war to end.